The Mandalorian Season 3 has come to an end, and over the last 8 weeks I've been doing breakdowns and reviews, theory videos and more for every single episode, but now that the dust is settled and all is said and done, I want to reflect on a couple of things from the finale but also this season overall. I think I've been pretty transparent about my criticisms of Season 3, and I'm not the first to say it did suffer from some structural issues, but one of my favourite things is that it did include some plot threads of what would have been Rangers of the New Republic, but unfortunately it didn't do much with them. Now I do understand that this is all one big story, what we call the Mandoverse. We have to be patient for future shows and seasons, payoffs are not going to be instant, but in retrospect, when we're looking at the entire season on the whole, it did feel very out of place. It's a standout episode and in my opinion, one of the best. Hands down, some of the best live action Star Wars. This was my cup of tea, it felt very Andor-like, and as I say, there were very few payoffs for that story in later episodes. There were some though. Chapter 21 furthered the New Republic stuff, and Chapter 23 showed us why Moff Gideon wanted Pershing out the way. He didn't want Project Necromancer to go ahead, but rather his own cloning project, cloning himself for a Force-sensitive army, and we also saw the Shadow Council, which kind of furthered some of those ideas regarding cloning projects. But Pershing's story wasn't completed. We don't know if the Mind Flay killed him, if he's still alive and doesn't remember. We simply didn't get answers. And also in Chapter 19 they talked about dark forces lurking, the incompetency of the New Republic, but we do know some of these are going to be explored in future shows, notably Ahsoka. We saw Mon Mothma in the teaser trailer, so more New Republic versus Remnant stuff is going to be explored, and Chapter 19 set the precedents. We saw the disorganization of the New Republic and the fact that spies who pass as Imperial defectors can slip right under their noses. And to this extent, there were tie-ins to Alphabet Squadron, the Aftermath trilogy, Lost Stars, and a variety of other media like novels and comics that deal with this time period and the themes of Imperial defecting. So as I say, Gideon wanted Pershing out the way, but it would have been nice if there was more of this style of episode. I loved that. Coruscant, the politics of this time period, the world building with seeing how the New Republic functions, all of that stuff made Chapter 19 one of my favourite episodes in retrospect. And Mando would do very well to have more Rangers in future episodes, and I think it will. And now that Din Djarin is basically back to square one, but a bounty hunter for the New Republic, he's going to come across some more remnants, so they're going to further that in Season 4. And by the way, on the subject of the Remnant, did you notice that Moff Gideon did not have a moustache in any scenes, and neither did his clones? Some fans are wondering, was this Moff Gideon a clone? That would be a crazy twist. Moff Gideon, the real one, is still out there. Share your thoughts on this in the comments down below. And so now guys, I want to talk about Grogu. Grogu was the star of the Mandalorian Season 3 finale. We got to see how far he's come in terms of confidence, Force abilities, and more than anything, love for his dad, saving the day and using a badass Kanan Jarrus style force push to keep the fire away from his newfound family, and Bo-Katan has been like a mum to him. But that scene was amazing, Grogu being brave, taking on those flames, and doing the right thing in the moment, and the music was just as epic. When the soundtrack drops, I cannot wait to hear this piece on its own. But I do think the Kanan visual reference was deliberate, because the Ahsoka show's coming up, and while Kanan died in Star Wars Rebels, his apprentice Ezra is going to be a huge focus of Season 1. Ahsoka and Sabine finding him, and the Making Star Wars leaks have said they're gonna find him sooner rather than later. It's not gonna be a last episode sort of thing. So why am I bringing this up in regards to Grogu? Because throughout Season 3 the creatives on the show have been trying to link Grogu to Ezra in very subtle ways. In Chapter 17, Grogu was obsessed with the Purrgil. He saw them outside the N1 starfighter in hyperspace, and aside from being the creatures who launched Ezra and Thrawn at the end of Star Wars Rebels, they're also creatures Ezra had a connection to, and maybe Grogu does as well, given his past connecting to other animals. Did you notice in the Mandalorian Season 3 finale, when Grogu looked down into the waters, the Mythosaur awakened, it felt his presence. But the Purrgil were deliberate, as the Ahsoka show is coming out as the next live-action series, this coming August. Then there was the Mailoran fruit, and now the visual reference to Ezra's master. Are the two characters going to meet? Now we've spoken in the past about similarities between Grogu and Din, but there are also similarities between Grogu and Ezra, just as there are similarities between Ezra and Din, and some fans even think the two of them could be siblings, but that theory is for a different day. Both Ezra and Grogu have force abilities that parallel one another, strong connections connections to animals, and at one stage both were youthful and naive. Grogu has, and Ezra had, a childlike curiosity, and if Grogu needs another Jedi Master or someone to train him, Ezra is there. We know that Jon Favreau wants to connect all of these Mandoverse shows, so is it possible that Grogu and Din appear in Ahsoka this summer? The Mandalorian Season 4 was written when the Ahsoka show was in production, so an overlap is not impossible, and aside from Grogu and Din, there is another character who connects the two shows together, Bo-Katan Kryze. In Chapter 11 of Season 2, Bo-Katan knew that Ahsoka was on Corvus.
Take the Foundling to the city of Caladan on the forest planet of Corvus. There you'll find Ahsoka Tano.
And given that Corvus plays into the show, could Bo-Katan show up if Ahsoka needs an ally? Maybe Bo-Katan wants to let Sabine know that Mandalore's been re-established. Sabine is still a Mandalorian. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but there are connections there if they need them. Another visual reference with this Grogu scene that I noticed is Yoda's Force Ghost from The Last Jedi, the sacred Jedi text on fire on Ahch-To Island. And something I've been wondering for a very long time ever since Season 2 is, are we ever going to see Grogu interacting with Yoda's Force Ghost? That's an interaction I would love to see, but I guess that Din is now his adoptive dad. There wouldn't be much purpose in a Yoda Force Ghost cameo, unless it's to give him advice, if of course he was one of his masters or biological father. But next up, my dear friends, is the Ahsoka show. I cannot express just how excited I am. And so now, my dear friends, we look towards The Mandalorian Season 4, which now has a release window. Season 4 of the series has been on the books for a long time, and along with Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew, it's gonna form the bulk of the next stage of the Mandoverse before the Dave Filoni Mando movie in 2026. Back in February, it was revealed by Jon Favreau that Season 4 was written, and Making Star Wars revealed a new insight into when we can expect it on Disney+. They say Season 4 of the hit series is gonna start filming in October, with pre-production, props, and sets currently being made, not to mention a rumour of Slave 1 appearing, so the return of Boba Fett. They also note that the reason Season 4 was written so early was to avoid the threat of the incoming writer's strike, and ensures cameras could start to roll as soon as possible. Now, given what we know about production times and delays, we can expect Season 4 to drop sometime in 2025, between January and March, hitting a 15 to 18 month gap between the start of production and the season premiere, Chapter 25. So that's going to drop in the same year as the Rey movie, the one by Obi-Wan, which is completely unrelated. On the subject of what we know about Season 4, very little, but Jon Favreau says he wants to tell a fully formed story across multiple series, so fans should expect even more connective tissue outside of the scope of Mando, so the Book of Boba Fett, maybe Boba Fett Season 2, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, and so on. And common to all of the upcoming Mando shows is Grand Admiral Thrawn. When the time comes for him to make himself known as Pelion Teased, he's gonna give the New Republic hell. If you thought Moff Gideon was bad, this is a true galactic threat, because he's building his fleet, he's coming from the New Beyond, and he's not alone, and we're gonna talk about him in more depth tomorrow. Look out for that video. We're gonna break down some big new reveals, a preview for the show, and also some new comments from the cast. You're gonna love it, it's gonna be chill, it's gonna be fun, and as always, no jibber jabber. But with that said, my dear friends, share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you always.